God is pressing me to share this story with you. It's a true story. A while back, several years, I was feeling physically so bad that I was really debating whether I might like to go to heaven instead of just staying here on earth and doing what little I could because I'm so handicapped and in so much pain and so weak. But I was wondering, what would I do in heaven? I had no idea. Could I even be of any use when I was in heaven, or would it just be getting to enjoy life, so to speak? And I kind of felt like Paul did. I'd like to stay here as long as I can be of use here, because there's still so many needs. People have so many needs, and because God's just given me a heart to love people, and so I like to do whatever I can to love them and be a help. But I had no answers to this question. And one night, I'd gone to sleep, but Jesus woke me up, and he came and he took my hand and took me into heaven. And we went into this large building that I believe was like a dome, if I remember correctly. And it had a spiral walkway going up like several stories high. And at the top of this walkway, there was an opening where a conveyor belt brought babies into this place. And I questioned him about this. What is this? What are all these babies? Well, these were babies that had been aborted. These were babies who were stillborn, babies who had died before they came full term, or babies who had died at birth. They'd really never been given a chance to live their lives on earth. And as one baby came out, he told me to pick it up and hold it. So I picked it up and I held it to my chest, my shoulder, and just loved on it. And it was amazing just to pour love into this little one who, because its parents were on earth, would have no one to love it. And I just held it and loved it. And time passed while I was there, and I would walk around with this little one. Thankfully, didn't have to change the diapers, didn't have to feed it. I just walked around with it and loved on it and talked to it and sang to it. And there were others who were doing the same thing with other babies. And then as this baby was maturing, becoming like maybe what I would think is a year old or so, where, it's going to be getting down and moving and getting around into things and needing to do things just besides being held. Then Jesus told me it was time to hand it on to someone else. He said, because you aren't staying here. And so I gave it to someone else to care for. And he says, now I'll show you more. And he takes me out from that building to other buildings that are it's like a whole village where they care for all these children that were unborn on earth. And first we went to what would be like the older babies and toddlers room, or actually it was a whole separate building, a building just for the older babies and toddlers. And there were angels there that cared for them, and there were some people also who had already come into heaven who were there caring for them. And it was all joy and light and beautiful colors and lots of love being poured out to them. And then we went on from there to like an area for older children, like a preschool. And they were being taught and trained things, but it wasn't like the things we teach our children here on earth necessarily, because they didn't really need to know how to read and write English or do math. It was like all just understood in your being, in your mind. You could just understand these things. But it was about life that they were taught and about relating to each other. And then we went on to like the school for children, school age. And they also were learning things, but they were being taught things like about physics and science and how things grow and uh, and animals and continued studies on loving and relating to one another, and studies also just teaching about what life on earth was like. and but not to the extent that they had to live life on earth, but just so they would have some understanding of it. And all of this area was it was beautiful all around every building. And the children were taken on outings. They would go out into this beautiful green area and gardens and flowers, and each child had someone accompanying it, mostly angels accompanying them. And all was happy and joyful. And there was no sadness. And there was an excitement for the learning that they were doing. And they were maturing time-wise, I think, much faster than we would expect on Earth. Although, of course, there was no, like, keeping of time. And the sun always shined, and it was never night, and it was never dark. And as Jesus showed me these things, it was just such a blessing to me to see it all. And then he said, "Do you think you would like to do this work?" And I thought, yes, I could enjoy that. I really could enjoy it. It was wonderful just to be giving and receiving love with these children. And I would never have thought about myself being a person to do childcare and enjoy it, because here on earth, that's just not my thing. I loved and cared for my own children, but I really would not have wanted to do it for a job. But there, it was different, and I loved doing it. And I would have been satisfied doing it. It would have been a good job, so to speak. And then he brought me back to earth and let me know that it really wasn't time for me to go yet, and that it was okay. But he had wanted me to experience that. And I found it to be a really wonderful blessing, because I had lost a daughter when I was 6 months pregnant with her. The umbilical cord had gotten twisted and was wrapped around, and it broke. So it was a natural abortion. But I lost her, and it was a great loss. It was a lot of sorrow. And I've known people who've had abortions, and they just carry so much weight and so much guilt. And I also had been wondering, like, what happened to my daughter? Was she doing well? How was she cared for, and what happened to her when she went to heaven? Because I assumed she went to heaven, since that's what we've been taught in the church anyway, and that's what Scripture would seem to bear out. And yet, from what Jesus showed me, where these children go, I see that she would have had a wonderful life, much more wonderful than she would have had here on earth, because it wouldn't have had any pain and sadness. And then, maybe a year after that, as I thought more about her on and off after that experience, I began to wish that I really could see her and see the young woman that she had grown into and what she was like. And for about a week, I kept feeling a presence come upon me. And I would get all tingles and goosebumps, and I didn't know what it was all about. But then, one Sunday in church, at City Church, I was feeling that very presence, and it was rather disconcerting because it was such a heavy presence. And a woman came up to me who was a stranger, and she said, "Are you feeling a presence on you?" And I said, "Yes." And she says, "Do you want to know what that presence is?" And I said, "Yes, I would like to know." And she laid a hand on my shoulder and she says, "That is your baby that you lost. This is your daughter. She's wanting you to know that she's okay." And that she loves you. So I feel really blessed to know how loved and cared for these children are in heaven. And I think some of you maybe have lost children. And I want you to know that your children are loved and cared for. And that, assuming that you know the Lord, you will get to see them. And they will be fine. And they will love you and they will be happy. And it will be joyful. A joyful reunion. And this school and this whole area in heaven where these children are, older children came also at different stages, and they were taken to whatever building was appropriate for their age. So each child that has died, no matter what age, is loved and cared for all the way through. And I believe it's a blessing. And I'm thanking God that He took me to see that and that I can share that with you. I also recently had this confirmed by someone else who's been to heaven and saw the same place. And I thought that was very, very good. It settled it in my heart that I could share this, that it is something that's true. So, God bless you. I hope this touches you and blesses you and frees you from pain and worry about the children who've gone on, even including the aborted children.